component to really get the best out of both worlds.
Okay, we've talked a little bit about generational differences in the workplace in our previous shows. Do you feel that certain generations are more accepting of change and others are more resistant to it? What do you see there?
Yeah, I do. I see mostly the older generation is more resistant to it. Now, it's not true with leaders. Leaders, since the beginning of time, have wanted to change the world, right? So that's what they're all about. So I mean, some of our best leaders are, in their 90s, their 80s, and they thrive on this stuff. But you get into kind of the traditional corporate man, kind of frame, and you've still got people who want to, plug and chug for 30 years. They want to climb the ladder, and they're not looking at really heavy-duty dynamic change as a way of life. So there is a big divide among the generations in my experience.
Okay. Now, your most recent book, again, Getting Change Right. What inspired you to write this particular book?
Well, I've been doing these techniques. I've been using my background. By the way, I did street theater for 10 years. I'm very interested in how you get people involved. Initially, it was how do you stop people when they're going somewhere else? That was the first step, and you can do that by doing just really strange things, and they'll stop and check you out. But then I got interested in how do you get them to feel compelled to be part of the production? And there, really strange things will backfire on you, because if you're too strange, they want to distance themselves from it. So I've been using the techniques that I developed in my street theater to make corporate events compelling and to raise the bar on the vision so that it's not just about making money or it's not just about the corporate agenda, but it's really about activating kind of the human potential in the organization all the way down to the individual level. And so people have been saying, you got to write this stuff down. This is a different way of looking at it. And so that's what I did.
Earlier you said something about the 5 gems of listening, was it?
Story listening, yeah.
Story listening. Can you give us a couple?
Sure, yeah. There's 5 things I listen for when I'm asking someone to tell me their story. One is high-value knowledge nuggets, I call them, or big wins. Sometimes something will just tumble out of someone's mouth, and it's like, if we do that, man, everybody's going to be happy. And if you imagine you're talking to 25 people, you always walk away with 3 or 4 of those. Second thing is educational deficits. Sometimes someone just doesn't know something, and it's keeping them from playing a bigger game. So you need to make sure that they get the education. Themes. Anytime more than one person mentions the same thing, that's a theme, and it doesn't have to be rational, doesn't have to make sense. It just means that there's a pattern swimming in the system, and you want to know it. Red lights. Red lights is when someone says you're going to tank, and this is why. You're going down in flames. Let me tell you why. Definitely want to pay attention to that. And yellow lights. Yellow lights is where someone says, like, if you don't bring this person on board, you're in for real trouble, or you're going to see your resources drained because of such and such. So those are the 5 gems right there.
Thank you for sharing those.
Sure.
Well, we've got to take a break, and when we come back, we're gonna ask Seth about the pitfalls when we're talking about getting change right. What pitfalls should we avoid? You're watching We Mean Business. We'll be back in seconds.
Lead paint poisoning affects over 1 million children today. Dust from lead-based paint could cause violent behavior. If your home was built before 1978, log on to leadfreekids.org.
Check out this chef, right?
So gay.
Please don't say that. It's like if I thought this pepper shaker was stupid and I said, man, this pepper shaker is so 16-year-old boy with a cheesy mustache. When you say that's so gay, do you realize what you say? Knock it off.
Welcome back to We Mean Business. I'm Steve Dorfman here with Tony Marchanti, and we're here with Seth Kahan. Seth's most recent book is Getting Change Right. Seth is a consultant and obviously an author as well, and he's not drinking beer. I assure you, it's some kind of a spring water.
Club soda. It's club soda.
Oh, club soda. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're talking about getting change right, and I wanted to ask you, Seth, what are the common pitfalls that people need to avoid when enacting change?
Well, the biggest thing is to avoid pitfalls. Log jams, obstacles, bottlenecks, challenges, all of these things are huge opportunities. If you think of a log jam as a confluence of many forces that are kind of coming together in the system and tied in a knot, when most people run into these problems, they go, no, stay away, this is a problem. Actually, it's one of the hugest opportunities there is. And it's your opportunity to be Alexander with the Gordian knot. You know, Alexander was going to invade Persia, and there was this huge knot called the Gordian knot, and the legend said whoever could untie this knot would get all of Persia. And Alexander pulled out a sword and chopped the knot in half. It frayed, and then he went in to dominate Persia. He actually did overtake Persia at that point. So this is, when you have a problem like this, it's the opportunity for the change leader to really move the energy through the system, and you can get dramatic change very fast in a particular logjam or obstacle. The biggest recommendation that I have is to prepare for these things. I like to think of having a SWAT team mentality. You think about the guys in the SWAT team, you know, they have these big armored vehicles and these battering rams that are like 60 feet long and these strange bazookas that like shoot nets or do whatever. And they, you know, they get into these things. These are like toys. They practice them. So these guys are just waiting for someone to get kidnapped because they want to get their toys out and play with them, you know. Well, you want to have that kind of mentality in your change program. You want to have a couple of really good facilitators who are just waiting for a big knot to come along so that they can pull out all the stops and use all their cool new techniques and move that thing forward in a huge jump.
Very cool. I was just thinking, I'm just thinking about nets and guns.
Yeah, he's a great storyteller.
I was thinking of, yeah, exactly. That's the power. I was thinking about the previous interview we did about conflict and how you prepare for conflict. We were talking about, I mean, for me, that was a really good, you know, moment of kind of realizing it's going to happen.
Right.
So the same thing, your log jam's going to happen. You got to be ready for it and
That's right.
have a team. When you look at a large company, and I don't know whether my question even has an answer because the kind of thinking is very different, but who's the person or title in the company? What level should be that change thinker, that change leader?
It's really the person who has the passion. I've seen it happen at all different levels. You do need to get executive endorsement, but it doesn't have to. The champion doesn't have to be at the executive level. Steve Denning, you know, was the champion for knowledge management at the World Bank, and he had, for all apparent purposes, been assigned to Siberia. He'd been parked in some obscure part of the organization, and because he had the passion, he rallied the people and really changed the organization.
Wow, very neat. And I would think it's crucial that upper level does buy into it at some huge point, because obviously the whole bottom level could be, you know, kind of bubbling and changing and doing, but eventually hit the ceiling and it doesn't go anywhere.
Right. The top level does have to be bought in at some point, and it, you know, really you're talking about, what I'm talking about is large-scale transformation. Right. So you want the top in the loop.
Right.
You know, that's the ideal
sure.
situation, because you're talking about strategy, you're talking about mission, you're talking about vision, all of that stuff.
Now, how can you boil those large-scale concepts and large-scale companies that you change down to a smaller level, maybe for the small business person, or a smaller level company, you know, mid-sized companies? How does that evolve or change when you think about the change leadership?
Well, I actually do a lot of work with organizations that have like 80 people, as well as those that have tens of thousands. And I think your suggestion, your example of working in a restaurant, where you could have 5 or 12 people, for example, these same principles would apply. I mean, really, engagement's what's at the core of this. It's moving from the model. The old model is that you have a message that gets cooked, and it goes through the system, and to the extent there's noise in the system, that message is interfered with, and then it's decoded, and then you have someone who receives it. That model was actually created in the 1940s, and it was published in the 1960s by Bell Labs by 2 guys, Shannon and Weaver. It's been called the mother of all communication models, and it totally sucks when it comes to human interaction. It's fantastic for computers. Yeah, that's a technical term. It's great for the internet. It made the internet possible. Binary communications, fiber optics, all of that works on that model. But we don't. We have to construct things together. So the term for that is social construction. We have to build. It goes back and forth. It's very messy. You ask tough questions. I don't have answers for them. You help me out. You know, you shoot me down. I mean, that is how human beings relate to each other. So all this is about getting people together to talk, to interact. And you can do that with 5 people just like you can with 50,000.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's the whole psychology change of, you know, maybe now is the time we're shifting gears, but you're looking at one level of management thinking, well, this is what the rule is, and this is what the deal is, and this is what you need to accept. And the other level is saying, hey, we want to be a part of this, we want to be part of this. And so it's that, to me, I think of kind of the power struggle, or maybe the letting go of the, you know, the old ways, and say, okay, let's put this on the table and look at it, and we're all equal. Instead of me, I'm the boss, and you're the you know, lower person. Let's look at it all together as equals and say, what's the possible solutions?
Well, there's 2 different ways to cut an organization. If you take like a small restaurant, for example, you know, the person who's running that show really is kind of the font of the energy that makes that business possible. I mean, they're the ones who put their own neck on the line. They're the ones who have the vision. They're the ones who do the hiring and firing. They're the ones who get the resources. And so there is this kind of, you know, pyramid where that person is essentially running the show. That is a legitimate cut. But then there's another way to take a look at it, where that person is at the middle of a social network, and suddenly they're not anywhere near the top. Suddenly they're in a web, and employees have information they don't have, They're like talking. I mean, think about a waiter in a restaurant. He's hearing it from the horse's mouth what the customers like and don't like. The cook is sweating it out in the kitchen, and they're involved with procurement. They're involved with customer demands. They're involved with